Well, we had taken our turbo apart to clean it, so I think it's about time we go ahead and put it back together. Okay, I was just going to explain my clocking here. Of course, this is not the final clocking. This is just trying to get close to what I want. I'm probably going to have my flange coming out sideways. So it's going to bolt to it sideways. And then I want this straight down because I'm going to have a bend coming off and going to the front to the intercooler. So. Okay, so what I've decided to do is just take this intercooler, flip it upside down, and put the pipes at the top, so that way it lets it sink down in there a little further. And you know, I've still got probably about a little over a third of my radiator still exposed directly to air, so I'm hoping that'll keep it from running too hot. Next thing I got to do is clearance for my pipes. Now, someone before me has already cut this up here. I mean, originally I want to, or I mean, eventually I want to go ahead and go back to a stock style grill, and at that time I'm going to need this mount and this mount, and I'm going to need the center support. Well, the center support can't bolt in because the intercooler covers where the bottom's got to go, so I'm going to have to do some modification on the center support to get it back in there. And whenever I do get a stock grill back, I'll probably have to do some modification, you know, to these mounting points as well. But for now, we're just going to use our pencil and kind of scribe what needs to be cut out. Now, I mean, this is actually going to move up just a smidgen, so we're going to have to cut all this out all the way back to there, and then this is already cut, but we're going to go ahead and, yeah, we're probably going to need to cut that, so we'll go ahead and cut this back. Go ahead and cut this back as well to here. See, well, all that's gonna get cut out. Can't really run any of the piping until you know, until we get the hot side fabbed up. But I'm gonna go ahead and mount my intercooler and go ahead and cut the recesses where the piping's gonna have to go through. Alright, you can see we got our recesses cut out here. Next thing we need to do is modify our center support here. Like I said, the only reason we really need that is because in the future we want to run a 73-74 OEM style grill. So if you can see this, let me get on the other side of the camera to make sure you can. Alright, so this is the top of the center support. This is where it bolts right there. You can see on the truck here. These two bolt holes line up with two bolt holes right there above the bumper. We need to keep that. These two bolt holes bolt down to well, some other shit. There weren't even any bolts in them. So if it's been this long without them, then I'm not worried about needing them. But what we've got to do, see how this curves around at the bottom? Well, the intercooler is right here. It fills in all this space. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off right through here, and then we're also going to cut it out here and down to where at the bottom we just got this flat piece of metal. It'll just be, you know, a piece of metal. We'll cut all this out, so that way it can, once we put the intercooler in, this can slide behind the intercooler, run our 2 bolts in here, run our 2 what's what I'm looking for, hood latch bolts in here, and good to go. So I've been told that these 73, 74 center pieces here are getting kind of hard to come by. Somebody on a forum told me that you can't order reproductions of these, and he's like, man, I hope you don't have to cut up that center support. When I started talking about doing a turbo, I said I was gonna have to mount the intercooler up there, and this guy commented, he's like, I hope you don't have to cut that centerpiece out, you won't ever find another one. So this is for you, guy, you know who you are. I'm hacking this thing all to shit. There we go. It ain't pretty right now, but we'll probably sand it down and hit it with a coat of paint. So these bolt holes here, none of the bottom bolt holes had any bolts in them since I've owned this truck. So we're going to, I actually put this here as a standoff for the little pipe grill that I've been running, but we'll have to chase the threads on these and find 2 bolts that fit. I wasn't worried about it before, but you know, now that we're going to be cutting so much material out of the radiator support, I want to get as much structural support as I can in other places. So now that we got everything trimmed up, you know, our center support there, it fits good. We've got to get our 2 bolts to go through it down here, but what I'm really liking here is the intercooler, you know, instead of being straight up and down and pushed all the way back, now I'm seeing that I've got room. It can kind of lean forward this way, which is good, because that's going to mean we don't have to cut quite as much out of these supports to get a piece of pipe to go through here. Where before I thought I was going to have to cut this all the way back to the flat part, it turns out I may be able to just notch it. Regardless, even if we notch it, I mean, we're still going to have John, you know, box it in to keep what strength it's got there. I mean, I'm not, you know, this radiator support, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, but you know, we want to keep what strength we got. So essentially what's going to happen now is I'm going to go underneath and try to fabricate up some brackets to, you know, you've got your little bolt nubs like this, top and bottom. Well, we're probably not going to use the top ones, but we're definitely going to use the bottom ones. And what I may actually do up here is, you know, it's leaning forward a little bit, but I may push it back just enough to get it off that brace. Well, the brace is kind of flexing back right now because it's not bolted at the bottom, but I may push it back just enough to get off that brace, and I may run a piece of aluminum stock from here to the other nub, just a flat piece of aluminum stock, and maybe make a bracket, a little L bracket to come off of it and come up, and drill a couple holes right here, you know, to hold the top solid. Probably about like right there. I mean, just barely clearing that is all I want, so that vibration, you know, so it's not rubbing up against it and screwing up one of my bars on the intercooler. Then once I get that mounted, I guess we can kind of see where we got to cut here, because what's going to happen, like I said, on the other side is we're going to come out, you know, come out and curve in, and I'm going to cut, you know, probably a 4-inch hole here on either side. So this will be our end pipe, our charge pipe from the turbo to the intercooler, and then that'll be our pipe coming out of the intercooler back in. and then up to the intake. Something else I didn't mention before is part of the reason that I want this to have a pretty good sized gap, and it's got about, like, even when I lean it up just a little bit, it's probably got about a, I want to say a 2.5, maybe, yeah, maybe 2.5 inch gap between the intercooler and the radiator. Number one, I want that so air can circulate, but the primary reason I want that there is because, as I said in a previous video, we're going to get air conditioning for this thing eventually, and when we do, the condenser is going to have to be back here between the radiator and the intercooler here. Now, I'm not sure, I do want to add an auxiliary transmission cooler as well. I'm not sure at this point where that's going to go, because, you know, I don't want to pack anything else here. We'll have intercooler, condenser, radiator, unless the condenser is small enough that I can offset it to one side and have the transmission cooler on this side. I'm probably not going to get a very large transmission cooler, just because, you know, it's already running the cooler in the radiator, and I'm going to keep it that way. I'm just going to have a small transmission cooler as an auxiliary, so we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's make some freaking brackets, yo. This is for everybody who ever said, man, I wish I didn't have to use my vise in the floor. Everybody else has got a nice workbench with the vise mounted on it. Well, I've got a nice workbench, but damn thing's covered with bullshit right now, so we're just gonna do this in the floor. There's one bracket. Hope you guys can see that. Try to do the other one about the same. I guess it would be better if I marked it. I love sloppy mechanics. I love Matt, but I ain't him, guys, so if I don't mark something, it's going to turn out freaked up. I don't have the luck that guy's got. Alright, so there we go. Just load that bitch in there. Try to get it straight. Get what I call close enough to straight. Alright, two almost identical brackets. There they are. The bolts that come with the intercooler don't actually fit through the slot in the bracket, so I guess what we'll have to do is set it under there, mark where it's going to have to go, and you know, make the hole a little bigger. I was kind of hoping that that would be somewhat adjustable, but I guess that's not going to happen. What do you think, Danielle? Danielle don't give a shit, guys.
Wife's hollering dinner time. I've already worked 13 hours today, so I'm pretty wore out. I'm going to go in here and eat some dinner, and we'll work on this some more tomorrow.